What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Hey Huzi. Today we're talking about some fun things, and we have Mr. Nathan Swift back on the show. And for those of you that don't know, Nathan is the marketing director for Huzi.ai, which is an AI implementation company for really anybody. But what's interesting is that for the last 24 to 48 hours has been Anthropic. We get into what happened with Opus 4.6 and 4.7, why most of the users missed it. What was interesting is that Anthropic is also trying to become the Apple of the AI world, which I find to be interesting. And the bigger question that really sits underneath all this is, why does the DIY AI stop being or start being enough? When does it become enough? When do the serious professionals that are leveraging this technology just say, I'm done, or I need help, or I need you to do this for me? I think that those are the questions that I really want to dive deep into today. How we can help, when you need to step into that frame, and when or where you want to probably decide whether or not this is becomes the cost of acquisition for you versus the overall total investment. The problem is that most of us don't know what we're spending our money on, and it gets a little dreary at that point. So Nathan, hey man, thank you so much for being here. Sorry for that long-winded introduction.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say when is it the technical users, the super users just gonna call it quits and have some platform babysit the app for them, right? Just do the work for them and then they get the results at the end. But then there's the little guys who aren't the technical expertise. What are they gonna do? How do they even catch up?
Yeah, man, it's a struggle. It's one of those things because the frame is very similar. It's applied to almost every style of industry. In every decade or two, something comes up, and the output doesn't change, but the mechanism of which you use the thing to build the thing changes.
Mhm.
I do want to ask because I've had this question come up many times in terms of Who's the AI and specifically Halo. What, just in like a sentence or two, just keep it really simple. What does it actually do? Like what does Who's the AI actually do?
Well, it's a loaded question. I don't know if you can sum it up in a sentence or two. Man, what does it do? Like,
Well, let me ask you this:
is there a single use case for any AI?
what problem does Halo serve or solve?
Halo removes a lot of the technical aspects of your other AI models. So, Claude Cowork or Claude Code or ChatGPT, it makes you have to reason less. So Halo, you do a little bit less reasoning and it's a little bit more done for you on the back end. And the AI agents that are set up there take a lot of that workload off. So if anybody's familiar with N8N, you can, or Zapier, you can basically build these agents that do a task and then feed that response into the next agent that does the task and verifies it and then feeds it to the next agent. But in Halo, you just natural language prompt it and it builds these agents for you and then kind of gets the task done in the background. And then there's a little bit of iterating process. And once you lock in the files and the context and the structure of it, it does a really good job of providing the same results that are, just cohesive across the board.
That's interesting. I was having this discussion the other day, and I was curious because people that are in the space of artificial intelligence and tech and SaaS all tend to kind of have this similar problem, which is their past, even like the last 6 months of what they assumed what it would be like to running a SaaS company in the AI world versus what it is today are completely two different existence or two different scenarios. I used to think that the winning marketing motion for AI was speed. That was the consensus that most people had. You ship fast, you iterate publicly, and then you just let the product kind of tell the story. And I find that most people have changed their mind on that aspect because speed is necessary, yes, but it's not necessarily sufficient in the long term, especially when you see technology advance so quickly that you just cannot keep up. And so you have companies that are AI wrappers that are trying to solve a problem, but there's a million other AI wrappers that are trying to solve the same problem. So what is it that you're actually buying into? What makes them distinctive from one another? I also noticed that what I did not see clearly 6 months ago is that the trust in AI tools, the confidence in actually wanting to attempt to use them. Because if you think about it in a different light, AI tools has become some form of currency for capability. It gives us or gives the user the ability to essentially, I look at it as like you're becoming an android. You're enhancing your brain or your physical attributes, whatever the case. In this case, you're extending the knowledge and you're minimizing that gap if you are an expert in set fields. They're making them based on whether people are running a system versus what they actually understand and what's actually happening all at the same time. And so if you have a 123 IQ, well, now you have technically, let's say, 10 different AI agents with 160 IQ per agent. So it becomes pretty insane. And so what I find that the diagnosis for all of this isn't so much which wrapper do you go with or how can I beat the next guy doing the same thing to be able to solve a problem for my set industry. It becomes how can I leverage our area of expertise so that we can not only enhance the speed of which our specific industry demographic clientele needs, but essentially to hold their hand or do it for them in such a way that isn't complicated. Do you agree, disagree? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of key points, and uh, just to back up to the very beginning, we're gonna get into this later, but the problem that happened that we're gonna discuss is 4.6 to 4.7 Opus, which was a Claude model that came out. And 4.6 started to it was a flagship product. It started to basically burn a lot of tokens and become really dumb, and people were still paying for it. So then Claude came out with 4.7, which resolved basically every single issue that was with 4.6.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you're using Claude or Huzi or some wrapper, we're all under the thumb, or part of that company is all under the thumb of Anthropic and what they can actually provide and service they can provide to that wrapper. So when the model depletes, it's going to deplete across every SaaS that is trying to sell a wrapper inside of Anthropic, right? So the difference between like a wrapper and Claude and Huzi is that for the wrappers, they solve a problem that is maybe universal for a lot of companies, but is not fine-tuned to that actual company's issue, right? So we kind of want to be able to maybe serve some apps up ourselves with Claude Cowork. So use Claude Cowork, you can adjust it to your specific problem and then find a resolution for it, whatever app you want to build, CRM, I don't know. And then Huzi is the self-serve tech client, right? So you have people on the back end who are monitoring this Opus 4.6 issue and reverting back to a older model that has less token usage, so you're not burning up a bunch of tokens, and it has better like Sonnet 4.6. So it'll produce better results because it doesn't have the same issues as Opus 4.6.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all managed by us on the back end. So Cowork, you'd have to figure that out and change your model there. If you're using Claude Code, you'd have to do the same thing there.
Mm-hmm.
Huzi manage that for you. Make sure that you have the right model installed, depending on what's going on with the big AI companies. Right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So the wrappers still need to be fine-tuned to the client. Claude, you have to basically build it all yourself and then manage it and babysit this application. And then Huzi will do it for you with people babysitting the models that you're using on the back end.
So then let's kind of address what the paranoia was, which was the kind of like the cognitive atrophy of what was happening with 4.6, because everyone loved it. I loved it. I love it, right? It was the peak in terms of what was out of capability, what was out in the marketplace in terms of capability, right? And then it'd be kind of like this collective phantom lobotomy because you're trying to prompt expecting like the usual brilliance, and all of a sudden it skips steps. It doesn't remember skills that you've already installed. It hallucinates. There's these bizarre, careless mistakes. And then people were kind of getting fed up with it. Plus the reaching token limitations was beyond absurd. And that really, I think, kind of developed this real paranoia. And I don't know the numbers exactly, but I did read that there were quite a few users jumping ship because of it. And I don't know for how long. I don't know the duration. That's something that you guys will have to look into, or perhaps we could look into it later, but I don't feel it's that great of importance. But what it's interesting is that metric creates this cognitive dissonance because the data shows that 4.6 was generally struggling in terms of being able to perform consistently. And the users that were burning through their usage limits astronomically, I may add, they were just trying to correct the model's laziness. So it wasn't that they were using it and they were running out of their tokens because they were trying to create like these 3-4 apps at the same time or 10 apps at the same time and just going nuts. No, it's because they were trying to fix and configure what was already, or excuse me, what was going wrong within the platform itself. The crazy part, what I find interesting, is that people are saying that this new 4.7 model is technically worse. Let me rephrase. I've seen opposing sides. I've seen 80% better, 20% worse. And I've also seen 20% better, 80% worse. I think that just depends on the use case. And I think that depends on the level of expertise maybe that you have in terms of prompting, adding skills, knowing how to communicate with it, your level of understanding of the platform. But then that goes to show that if you're trying to build a platform for every person to be able to use and leverage, and that kind of goes against what you're trying to build, right? Is if you want to have something that anybody can access and anybody can build something phenomenal, then those are the things that you would have to take into consideration.
Yeah, so I think it might be a good idea just to dive into some of the statistics that users were seeing during that month of poor product shipment from Claude. Because they were paying the same price. That's why they got frustrated. That's why they left, because Claude downgraded their service and nobody knew about it, right? They did a bunch of like, it was basically poor deployment of the new model, as well as doing some secret things behind the scenes that they didn't like let their users become aware of and didn't notify them. So one of those things is like, if you're not super familiar with AI, we can look at this from a different perspective of like a contractor building a house. He's got a great reputation. He's the best in the industry. He's got the blueprints for your house, and he's going to go start and build it. Now, when he's building your house, he's looking at those blueprints. 1 out of every 3 times he decides to break down a wall or put in the plumbing. So he's kind of freehanding this thing. When typically that only happened 1 in every 16 times on smaller objectives. So when AI goes out and reads that file before it starts a task, it's actually skipping it now 1 in 3 times instead of 1 in 16 times, which is a really important thing to note, because that was a lot of the token burnage that people had. Was it would go write this, it would forget, it would take the prompt, it would go do the task without referencing the file that it needed for the context to do the task, and then it would say, oh, I did this wrong, I have to go back and fix it. Oh, I did it wrong again, I have to go back and fix it again. So that's where you got all that token burnage, was really inside of the users saying, hey, pause, I need you to stop this because you're accessing the wrong files and I need you to fix this. And also it trying to just run rampant on its own, fixing the problems that it's created that it didn't need to create because it didn't read the files. So that was all the token burnage that we saw, where people were basically using Opus for an hour and it would burn up their $200 a month subscription, all of their tokens right then and there. It's funny because Claude came out and said, hey, we didn't do this on purpose, because, why would they burn more tokens on purpose? It just costs more for everybody and they get a worse experience in the platform. But then you can also connect your wallet and you can increase your token usage as the consumer, saying, hey, I want to burn more tokens, connect it to my wallet, add another 300,000 or whatever, and it still provides that income for them. But would Claude actually do that just to lose customers in the grand scheme of things? Probably not. The shady things that they did do, though, was they took everybody's platforms and turned down the model of Opus 4.6. So you have basically its effectiveness of doing a task. There's low, medium, high, and then there's like X extreme or something, right? It turned everybody's model down to default without notifying anybody that they did that. So were they trying to save some token usage there? Were they trying to have AI do less in-depth analysis of everything? And you can kind of see that flip in Opus 4.7 because now they have adaptive thinking. So you don't get to select if you want thinking mode on or off. It's just adaptive across the board. So it decides, which is less control, and users are a little upset about that too. That's probably the 80-20 split one way or the other that you saw. That's probably been referenced quite a few times in there.
Okay, so in the grand scheme of things, it's supposed to magically fix almost every single complaint that we've had. This new update, correct?
Yeah, and as far as I can see in the research that I've done and the testing that I've done subjectively, it has fixed quite a bit of that. The random calls, the hallucinations. It hasn't accessed files that it doesn't need to access, and access a lot more files than it had done previously.
But like you said earlier, it's using more tokens. It's burning more, correct?
Yeah, well, the scope of this it's tricky. So just follow me here. It is only burning more tokens on 4.7 because 4.7 is a more robust model, and it only burns tokens in the aspect of when you need it, when you ask it to analyze large technical files, right? So it's only a 1 to 1.3% increase. So it's not like a massive jump from 4.6 to 4.7 on the same task. It's a smaller jump, but it does add up.
Okay. So I guess my next question would be, or at least my comment would be, is that there is benefit there. However, it comes at a cost. So is 4.8 going to have all the benefits of 4.7 minus the consumption based off of your specific parameters that you had been mentioning? And if that's the case, then again, why am I as an individual that's already spending money on so many different tools and services? And truly, if I wanted to be masterful in this, I could dedicate time. But if I'm running an organization and I have to focus on being best at the thing that I'm actually doing out in the trenches, then I would hire expertise. I would hire expertise, whether that's internal or external expertise. I would hire someone to come in and become a master AI agent, AI person, right? Or I would find a credible like firm that I could partner with to be able to do this. And I think that's where, I know we always touch back on this, but it's very important to note, because if you look at what like some of the largest consultancy firms are out there, right? What they do so good is that they cultivate the best of the best around marketing, PR, expansion, sales, lead gen, what have you. If you're trying to acquire more business, that's generally what you do. You hire a consulting firm that specifies in that field. And so why would this be any different? Especially if you're trying not only to stay relevant, but to actually thrive and jump ahead a few lanes. Do you agree on that? I just don't know what, as the business owner, why that would be. To me, it's a no-brainer.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it is a no-brainer to go hire and have somebody do this stuff for you, like on back-end business work. But it's just like the internet. You would hire somebody to build your website because you didn't know how to do it, but it doesn't stop you from using the website and wanting to learn about the technology of the internet and your searches and your research and all the different other websites that you can go to that help you with this and that. I mean, it's just somebody exploring new technology, and then in specific use cases, they hire out what tasks that they want to get done that they can't do themselves. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't stop people from using AI as the new interface for everything search related or answer related, right?
Yeah. Which kind of brings this whole theory full circle, which is kind of spreading around the interwebs, is that people are starting to see, or at least make an assumption based off of actual trajectory and the path that it's been on, is that Anthropic is slowly becoming the Apple of AI dev tools in a way, right? I mean, Claude is no longer just a model company. It's trying to kind of own the AI workflow space. So what does that mean for the ethos? What does that mean for other organizations? What does that mean for companies like Huzi? Because the Claude model family, the OS, that's kind of now that's slowly becoming the number one tier. It's the thing that everybody's going to jump to. It's going to become the iPhone. It's going to be It's going to become the MacBook.
You remember Shazam?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that was like the first, hey, what song is this? And then it would listen to the, audio playing, and then it would tell you, hey, this is this song by whatever, right? Well, Apple bought Shazam and put it into Siri. Okay, so Claude's doing the same exact thing with like Lovable, for example. So
I
Lovable
didn't know
goes,
that. That's
yeah,
interesting.
if you guys don't know what Lovable is, you can basically create apps, deploy websites, designs, Canva-esque style, presentations, all that stuff. It came out as one of Claude's like first 6 app integration partners. And then just recently, like in the last week, Claude came out with Claude Design,
So hang
which,
on, real quick. I don't mean to interrupt. What would be the benefit of me using Lovable, paying for another service, than not just paying directly to Claude?
well, Lovable has Claude infrastructure for the backup setting or for the backend settings, and then it uses Gemini Nano Banana for the actual
Ah,
generations of it. So it's still a multi-model use case SaaS business.
you're paying for simplicity in the ecosystem.
Yeah, you are essentially, and you're also paying for the best and highest AI model that can create images, because Claude isn't the best
Correct.
at it, right?
Correct.
Gemini is. So
Yeah.
that you got to tie those things into.
So what else did they add to their ethos? I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Yeah, well, no. So Claude's built Claude Design, which essentially does the same thing as Lovable,
Hmm.
like better than Lovable does it. And are they cannibalizing their own business? Are they doing what Apple did with Shazam and bringing it in as a product feature and then kind of phasing out these big rapper companies? I wouldn't say Lovable's a rapper, but Let's just use that term for like just understanding. Yeah, cannibalizing that, bringing them in and then selling the product on their own after they get to see the analytics of people using that plugin from Lovable and seeing how well Lovable is performing and how many users they have. Can they take all of that money and bring it into a new Claude product called Design? Like, does it replace Canva? Does it? Yes, it does. Like, it's really good at what it does, and it's literally the first iteration of it
Oh,
coming out.
interesting.
Yeah, so you can deploy it
And
just like,
is it yeah, well you say is deploy is it through the like the Claude desktop app?
yeah. So you have to have a pro. It's not on the Cloud Desktop app right yet. I'm sure it will be, but
Okay.
you have to have a pro or a monthly, the $20 or the $200 a month for Claude, and then they're rolling it out to users who are part of those subscriptions through their website URL link that you can go to and play around with it.
Oh,
And
so
then once,
you'd have to do it
yeah,
through the
it's
okay.
like beta testing right now, and then they'll put it
Got
into
it.
the Claude Cowork desktop app once it's finalized.
So this could potentially be a Canva and not only a Canva, maybe even like an Adobe Express suite competitor.
Yeah, the competing for the same space anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Dang.
absolutely. So yeah, it is. It's much like Apple in terms of
How it's got
monopolizing industries
mm.
and kind of taking these companies that have put their trust into them and saying, hey, I want to use you as the full infrastructure, get all this funding, make all this money, and then have it ripped out from underneath you.
So by owning this workflow layer, by really owning the space, they get to decide which tools work best with Claude. They set the defaults, like the effort levels or what have you, right? And they can change
Um,
the behavior without notice. I'm
I don't
assuming
think that
so.
they. I don't think that they're strategically making people like Lovable's AI or API key like stupider. No, I think they're actually taking the data from Lovable and then making their product better.
But they've absorbed Lovable. It's technically within
No,
part.
Lovable is a whole separate company that does this, and then Claude Design is a replication of what Lovable is, but slightly different.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood. I thought earlier you said that they partnered or they bought Lovable or something.
No. So Lovable built their back end with
Got
Claude,
it. Got it.
and then used Gemini to create the actual
Got it.
images and deploy the websites
So
and whatnot.
there's still yeah. So there is still something like the cannibalism aspect behind it. Like why would they compete with essentially their own thing to some degree? But again, they could be creating their own ethos, just like Apple, an entire ecosystem where everybody on the Apple ecosystem just cannot leave it, even if they're still buying the same phone over and over again for years on end before it actually changes.
Yeah, but there's a problem with this because in 2023 when Eric first conceived the idea of Huzi, he had this video where this new tech age that we're in is that technology is going to exponentially advance because technology can advance itself, right? Computer AI can learn from itself. It can
Yep.
make itself better, and it can find new ways to do that. So the speed of which it can become better is it's day and night compared to what it was in 2014 or 2018, right?
Okay.
Which makes it very difficult when there's very few tech companies that own this data, that have trained the models, that can keep training the new models. So if you wanted to enter the space, like would it even be possible, or can these three companies monopolize the entire like creative platform business running space, or what does that even look like? Because I mean, there's no company that's going to come in and say, hey, we are the new best AI company, because they don't have any of the training data from the last 4 years of people even using it or increasing their models or coming out with new models. So there has to be like a lot of R&D to be done before you can come out and say that and have a new competitor in the market space. And I'm
Okay.
talking about Anthropics, and I'm
Yeah,
talking about
yeah, yeah,
Perplexity and
yeah,
OpenAI.
yeah. I think for those of us that don't want to be confused and want a partner that is on top of this stuff constantly, and is always iterating and is always staying ahead of the curve. And the great benefit to that is you literally have someone that you can say, hey, I need help. I don't know. How can I compete with X? What's going on in this space? I feel like that is the attachment that you have to a company like Huzi, because not only are you going to get the best software, the best tools, but you're going to have a company that's going to actually have human beings behind it that's going to help you throughout this
Yeah.
process.
And it's the checks and balances in between you, natural language, telling AI what you want it to do, and then it populating the response. Inside of that checks and balances is us making sure that all these models are saying what that they're doing what they say they're gonna do, and making sure that if they aren't, we're replacing them with a model that actually does do what it says it's going to do. So you don't lose, you don't hallucinate. The AI isn't hallucinating. It's not creating a worse version of something that you found to be really consistently good and of high value for your customers, that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, it does take off though. I think that is actually the biggest weight on somebody trying to do this themselves, is having to keep up with all the news, having to change out their models on the back end of whatever platform they're providing for other people. And I'm not talking like an AI wrapper that you're building. I'm literally talking about like, hey, if you're making a Facebook post, twice a week about whatever, and it starts making mistakes, like you're gonna have to go in and figure out why, or you're gonna have to go reset up your whole account in a whole different platform. And
Mm-hmm.
with Huzi, we just kind of figure that out, do it in the back end for you, and then you keep the consistency when a model starts to break. So your path from starting something to getting something done never really changes. We do all the work that would take up a lot of the time for somebody who's not like technologically advanced.
The machine will always try to tell you how smart it is.
Yeah, when it'll tell you how smart you are.
Yeah, and the the caveat to that is you're the one that has to live in the house that it builds, essentially.
Yeah.
Nate, it was such a pleasure having you today. I cannot wait to hear what we're going to be discussing next. Everyone that is listening, please check us out all on the interwebs at heyhuzi.ai or at heyhuzi or huzi.ai. I think I just repeated myself, but there we are. Nate, is there anything else that you would like to speak to the audience before we call it a wrap here?
Yeah. Go visit the description under the YouTube video or in the bio, wherever you're looking at this at, and schedule a meeting or send an email if you guys want to reach out and learn a little bit more and see if there's something that you could be doing better. We're not here to sell you Huzi specifically. We're here to help people understand how to use AI better, because the world is changing quickly.
I love that. We're here to help you figure out AI better. That's probably the best CTA I've heard ever. So thank you, man.
It's as dumb as it sounds. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Have a good one. See you on the next.